All right, everyone, welcome back again. We're live here, or I guess not live anymore, with Rob Nail, the CEO of Singularity University, here at the Global Summit in San Francisco, California. Rob, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, pleasure. It's great to be here. Thank you for being here with us.
Absolutely. Well, we're trying to inspire the future. Singularity's Global Summit, trying to create the future.
That's right.
What does that mean to you?
Wow, it means a lot of different things, but the directionality that we've really tried to set for our global community is how to leverage technology to shape a future of abundance for all. This is a framing that Peter Diamandis wrote about in his book Abundance now 6-7 years ago, and it's a description of the future that's possible if you take exponential technologies and forecast what's possible many years out. What can that bring to society? Like, what kind of problems can it solve? And so we ended up classifying what we call the global grand challenges, the biggest problems facing humanity in the next 30 plus years. And these map nicely to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They are the big things, right? Poverty, water, food, health, education. And we took a framing of those problems from a very, I'd say, entrepreneurial mindset, where we look at them from how do you meet the needs of the bottom billion? That's typically where nonprofits and everyone else focuses. But then also, how do you actually help improve the quality of life for people? And then how do you think of those challenges as opportunities for radical change? For example, could we eradicate poverty full stop? So instead of setting up a nonprofit that's going to help 1 million people, what if you understand the core underlying challenges and use technology, bring different people together, and completely change the paradigm so that goes away? And so, at least as an exercise, it creates a really interesting opportunity. So for us, creating the future means bringing together diverse sets of individuals and organizations to think differently about the possible future that's more equitable and is a more positive future for all.
What I like most about Peter Diamandis is one of his quotes. He says, "The world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities." What opportunities excite you the most?
Well, I tell you, it kind of depends on the day that you talk.
Right, yeah, exactly.
One of the greatest things that I have here in my role is this being surrounded constantly by just incredible people with amazing projects and passion and obsession for solving these things. Like, I don't know if you heard Naveen's talk this morning. He's like, passion is for losers. Obsession, that's where you'll find the winners, right? So these entrepreneurs, the ones that find this amazing thing, they're really passionate about it, but if they don't actually do something about it and hang on to it until they'll never give up until it's solved, that's where you'll find the source of true change. And so for me, where I find like these hot spots of areas where people are really digging in deep and really starting to make change, or shifting the paradigm totally. So a couple fun areas for me, obviously in the transportation space, this is an area where literally 5 years ago, there were still major car companies that were in total denial that autonomous vehicles were even remotely a possible reality in less than 30 years. And now, everyone just assumes electric cars are the future and autonomous vehicles are going to be the norm.
Right.
We're not certain exactly the timeline, but the paradigm has shifted in everyone's minds, which is exciting because now it opens up what happens next. What are all the secondary and tertiary opportunities that come around that? But what's also interesting is the technologies behind that open up all these other possible transportation solutions, like autonomous flight vehicles, like vertical liftoff flying cars. And there's 4 different companies that are killing it on that space, one of which is my best friend from undergrad. He and I worked at a flying car company in undergrad.
Oh, really?
We built a robotics business after we sold it, he left and started a flying car company again using technology of today, which
I love it.
Is so cool. And so I'm excited by how the technologies underlying transportation and really electrification of vehicles, and then the control systems and sensor systems is just allowing us to move things and people in totally new ways, which just makes the world so much more efficient. It'll bring back 50 billion hours of productivity in the U.S. If we weren't all wasting time just like doing this,
Right.
So those things are, I guess what excites me most about that is watching the world realize, oh, this is real. This is not a Silicon Valley fantasy. Now the future opens up to some new possibility. Food is another area where I'm really excited. We have a couple companies here showcased with food technologies and other enabling possibilities. And we just had Beyond Meat and Impossible Burgers and all these new things just sort of come out of nowhere. Except they've been on the curve for years,
right?
And we've been talking about it. And people are up until very recently when we say, well, what if we eradicate a very large contributing force to the climate crisis, which is methane, the use of agricultural land for cows and farm animals. What if we could grow that exact same meat in the lab way more efficiently and not use all the resources? You would take the load on climate and the environment way down, and also open up more possibilities. But the thing is, most people first response is, wow, like lab meat sounds icky and weird, and that's never really going to happen. Except now, like, there's several big companies and they're going public, and they're coming out with alternate meats, but they're also working on the same tissue samples, replacing the meat to be substitutes. So what we're socially accepting as food has now started to open up, right? So it's this paradigm where our view of what's possible sort of shifts in the zeitgeist, and when you see that edge, there's a lot of potential for new opportunities for businesses, for new investments, and also the follow-on disruptive forces.
It sounds like you're changing the future to me. Well, Rob, you mentioned raising poverty. You mentioned flying cars.
Yeah.
Now, when I think about that, how are people in poverty going to be able to afford cars? What are some of the discussions that you're having with leaders in this space around the digital divide and really reaching economic or people in poor economic situations?
Yeah. So this is an interesting area where the way it feels and the way what the data shows are often radically different. And specifically with this, we have a framing. So Peter came up with the 6 Ds of exponentials, and it was a way to just think about the trends and the implications of exponential technologies on our lives. And as technologies become digitized, they're disruptive and very deceptive, because effectively they are demonetizing, dematerializing, and democratizing products and services and the value of those products and services. And so what that means is that ultimately they become way more accessible. And initially, however, the people who pay for those technologies are the richest people out there, the early adopters, right? The people who are excited about these technologies and want to try them out in the first range.
Sure.
But because it's an exponential technology, the price curves also typically will drop off exponentially, which means then they can be more accessible. So if you look at the adoption of mobile phones over the last 20 years, it's an extraordinary exponential curve where everyone on the planet basically has access to mobile. In the next 5 to 7 years, through efforts of companies like Google with their Loon project, OneWeb satellites, Elon Musk's Starlink with nanosats, we have several big institutional companies that are going to connect everyone on the planet to the internet. for free or for the price of an ad, right?
Crazy.
Which then means everyone has access to the internet, which means everyone has access to the greatest educational tools that have ever existed, potentially the greatest healthcare doctors, which will be AIs, that have ever existed. And so now you're showing that even the services that we can't even pay for today are going to be available to everyone on an equitable level. That's the future of abundance that we foresee as possible. Now, there's like power structures and industries and everything else that will have to adapt to allow for those things to come forward. But there's a massive democratization of these technologies. But it does take time. It doesn't happen overnight, but it happens a lot faster than most people believe, and is way more disruptive than we usually expect.
Yeah, I think the internet almost is kind of like a conundrum itself. It's like a reflection of humanity. The way, if you think about it, it's free markets. But at the same time, like, you're also giving away a lot of data and information. Is there anything that scares you about how fast we're progressing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of edges there. There's a lot of nuance. I would just sort of remind us all that we're still in the prototype phase of the internet, right? The internet really is at least the new sort of construct of social media. That's brand new, right? We're really in the first phase of iterating how it does impact society and everything else. But I do think something that we've been talking about specifically on this topic for quite some time that really came to light here in the US over the last 2 years is around how media really does sort of manipulate decision making and thinking and voting, right?
Sure.
So the election here in the US, the company called Cambridge Analytica is the one that's gotten the most scrutiny, but they're not the only one, right? There's a lot of other things. Totally. So if you have the power to leverage these technologies and to put up very tailored messaging to you that would convince you to do something different, to make a decision in a different way, historically that's been called marketing. Just really, really good marketing, right? And those tools that we have in this digital world and social media are granting us sort of superpower marketing skills. And now we're starting to think, wait, this is maybe a little too effective, a little too manipulative. And I agree. I think we need to figure out how to regulate and also self-regulate. We need to be aware of the things that are influencing us, but the designers of many of these platforms have a responsibility and have an opportunity to create apps and tools that can help us and help us guide through things that are triggering us, things that maybe trigger unconscious biases that we may have, or are maybe pushing us in ways that we wouldn't have normally acted. The next wave, however, doesn't necessarily get any better. And what I mean by that is some of the technologies, and we talked about some today, and you can demo them here. We're now building the capability to more directly understand exactly what you're thinking and exactly what you're feeling. And I think I mentioned it this morning. We have a lab, a neurofeedback lab at Singularity University, and you can demo it here, where we can put on a headset, give you some content, or just directly have a conversation, and I can tell which word I say that freaks you out, excites you, confuses you. And we use it in our programs to enhance our learning environment so the faculty and the workshops that we create are more effective. So you can see how that will continue to build and be the most powerful learning platform that's ever existed, right? We're going to get far, far better at education tailored for you, so that anything you want to learn, we can streamline exactly how to teach you in your learning style. But that same tool can be used against us too, right? So now I know exactly what your trigger words are, your fears, and everything. So I can manipulate and influence you in ways that you don't even know and are aware of. And so one example.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So here's one fun example. So we work with a company called Soul Machines. Soul Machines is in New Zealand. They have a very realistic digital avatar. They create digital humans. and they basically can make it look like anything. We could digitize you, Kevin. We can have a virtual version of you, and it's powered by Google AI or IBM Watson.
I'd have to charge you for that, though.
You would have, yeah. Well, so think about it.
Can't get this face anywhere else.
So, I mean, you may be simulcasting this out and a handful of people listening to it, but what if we took your platform and everything you've ever written and blogged about, all your Facebook, all your social, and we fed that into the AI, and then we gave it a face that is your face, and then we sent you out to the world to interact with everyone that was interested in you. Or what if we did that with Einstein or Newton? Imagine how powerful it would be for a kid who is interested in physics but like has a hard time reading a book.
Right.
But if Newton's here with him and you can just ask him real-time questions and you can go as deep as you want into physics, that is going to be a very different kind of engaging kind of learning style.
Amazing.
But what if, who's your favorite pop star?
Favorite pop star?
Who's your favorite celebrity? Who do you like follow but don't want to admit it?
Who do I follow and don't want to admit it?
The Kardashians? Do you follow the Kardashians? You can't help but just like you're watching.
I like LeBron James.
LeBron James. What if LeBron James showed up and he said, Kevin, that thing you did last week was awesome. You know what you should do tomorrow? Come check this thing out.
Right.
You'd be like, absolutely, I'm going to do that thing LeBron just told me about.
Right.
And LeBron just did that for 100 million people.
Help with ball handling, help with my jump shot.
You got it.
Anything.
And he's going to sell that thing to you too. It's a workshop. It's
right.
$1,000.
Right.
But that is going to be a very powerful, influential force because you've been following that guy. He's your hero. If your hero shows up in your inbox and you interact with him like we're interacting with, and he's like, dude, you've got to do this thing.
Yeah.
You're probably going to go do that thing.
Oh, yeah.
And even if it's bad for you.
Right. Yes.
That's the edge.
Right.
That's the edge, right? So that's where we have to take some serious responsibility about how do we use this capability going forward, and how do we regulate it?
Right.
How do we make sure who takes the responsibility? Is it the user? Is it the company? Is it the government? I think it's everybody. I think we all have a role to play here. The first step is to be aware of what we have in our hands today, where it's going, and then we all have to have a conversation about the potential implications long term and the opportunities that may bring, so we can sort of nudge it and guide it where we think it should go. That's creating the future, right?
You're darn right. And what I like about that the most is I just love the sound of my own voice. So now I can just like download my own self and talk to myself all day. Well, so that would be great.
Imagine what your AI self would be telling you right now. It's remember that thing we talked about, a little too much ego in the interviews, buddy. Come on.
Exactly. No, I love it.
But it could be, so that's the other thing though, it could be your best advisor real time is you. Looking in the mirror real time. He's like, dude, stay off the donut.
Right.
We talked about this.
Right.
You could just get 10 more crunches. You can do it.
That's interesting to think about. How far away are we from something like this?
Go to Soul Machines. Go to RBS Bank, go to Autodesk. They have sales reps and customer service reps that are digital humans that you can talk to and say, hey, I don't know how to deal with my bank account. And they're like, oh, well, Kevin, let me help you out.
It's here.
A lot of us have dealt with like the phone service bot or chat bots. This is a digital version of an AI that is interactive and with natural language. So very different and very powerful. Much more accessible, right? Much more accessible. So we're just at the beginning of this, and Soul Machines is a fun company that has some big projects they're announcing this year. So stay tuned for that one.
Well, Rob, we've covered a lot today. We talked about how Singularity University is changing the future, what steps you got to go to get there, setting a vision in mind and achieving that and following that. And lastly, what policies and frameworks and regulations do we need to put in place, or at least think about for something that enrolls that fast and that quick? This takes a lot of leadership, Rob.
Yeah.
So the last question I'll ask you is, what is your definition of a real leader?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I probably have a few different frames of what I think of as leadership, but absolutely absolutely, a real leader, in my opinion, the kind of leader that I want to follow is someone who truly has a purpose that they are set upon, that they're not going to let go of. And they're able to make it accessible to everyone around them and bring people along with them, regardless of maybe the credit that they take, but it's about the purpose that they've set upon. And one of the things that I am most proud of with Singularity University is the community is filled with such an extraordinary spectrum of leadership around the world. New leaders that don't even know they're leading yet because they've got this problem that they can't help with solving, and everybody's watching them and wants to help them. That's leadership that doesn't even know it, right? And those are the people that we can help support in ways that we're learning as a community organization about what that responsibility is of a community to support this diverse set of leaders throughout. But for me, a real leader is really someone who wants to create a better future and bring everyone with us.
Rob Nail, you nailed it on the head. Purpose, obsession, and vision. Rob Nail, everybody, CEO of Singularity University. Thanks for your time today.
Pleasure. Thanks so much.